woman is standing in a beautiful kitchen at 6:12 a.m. The light is soft. Everything is calm. Everything looks like it is working. She has a job. She pays her bills. She even makes what people would call decent money. Nothing about her life looks unstable. But before she leaves for work, she opens her banking app, stares for a second, then closes it quickly, like she saw something she does not want to sit with. And without thinking too much about it, she tells herself the same sentence she has been repeating for years. Later, when life calms down, I'll get serious about money. Then we cut to another woman. Same country, same economy, same inflation, same headlines about rising costs and uncertainty. From the outside, their lives do not look that different. But something is shifting under the surface. This second woman is not louder. She is not more confident. She is not even perfectly disciplined. But she is quietly repositioning. She is moving her cash differently. She is learning assets earlier than she feels ready for. She is asking different questions. And most importantly, she is thinking in decades, not just paychecks. Not dramatic, not visible, but directional. And that is where the real difference begins. Because one woman is surviving an expensive decade, and the other is entering a wealth decade. And here's the part nobody says clearly enough. What if the next few years create more wealth for prepared women than the last 10 did for obedient women? Not because women suddenly became better, not because the economy became kinder, but because something deeper is shifting. Money is moving. Power is moving. Ownership is moving. And for the first time in a long time, women are not standing outside of that shift. They are standing directly in the path of it. Most women do not feel like they are entering a wealth window. They feel late. They feel underfunded. They feel like they missed real estate, missed the stock boom, missed the easy money, missed the best years. And to be fair, that feeling did not come from nowhere. Because when a woman looks at her life honestly, the surface story can feel discouraging. She may be working hard, earning something decent, doing what she was told to do, and still feel like the numbers are always one step ahead of her. Women in the U.S. still earn less on median than men. In the first quarter of 2026, full-time women workers had median weekly earnings of $1,098. Compared with women earned about 80.6% of men's weekly earnings. So when a woman feels pressure, she is not imagining it. When she feels behind, she is not being dramatic. When she feels like she has had to stretch every dollar, make every decision carefully, and still not feel fully secure, that feeling is rooted in something real. And security still feels fragile for a lot of people. In 2024, only 55% of U.S. adults said they had enough emergency savings to cover 3 months of expenses. Women were slightly less likely than men to report having that cushion, 53% versus 57%. So yes, the outside story says something very convincing. It says, you are under pressure, behind, and exposed. It says, this is not the decade where you get ahead. This is the decade where you just try to hold everything together. It says, be grateful for stability, even if stability still feels fragile. But that is only the visible story. The hidden story is far more interesting, and far more important. Because while many women have been looking at rising costs, stalled breathing room, and a system that still does not feel fully built for them, something bigger has been happening underneath all of that. Money is about to change hands on a historic scale, and women are increasingly the ones positioned to control more of it. And that is where the conflict begins. What I mean by a once-in-a-decade wealth window is this. It is a rare period when several structural shifts happen at the same time, creating an opening for ordinary people to move into stronger financial positions faster than culture expects. And that is what makes this moment different. This is not just one trend. It is not one lucky industry. It is not one temporary money wave. It is several deep shifts overlapping at the same time. A massive wealth transfer, a rise in female-controlled assets, a reset in who buys, owns, and makes financial decisions alone, and a technology and productivity shift that is quietly widening the gap between women who adapt and women who only cope. In the United States, McKinsey found that assets controlled by women rose from about $10 trillion into about $10 trillion in 2018 to about $18 trillion by 2030. Out of that, $54 trillion is expected to pass first to women. McKinsey also notes that by 2035, more than 40% of U.S. wealth could be controlled by women. We are standing in the early years of a major ownership shift. And yet most women do not feel that. They still feel like wealth belongs to somebody else. Somebody older. Somebody luckier. Somebody more connected. Somebody more naturally good with money. Which raises the real question at the center of this video. If the money is moving toward women, Why do so many women still feel like wealth belongs to somebody else? The first hidden shift is this. Women do not need a perfect economy to win. They need to recognize when money is in motion. Because most people imagine wealth as something static. Like some people simply have it, and other people do not. Like wealth is a fixed condition, a category, a personality type, a permanent separation between those who belong in that world and those who do not. But that is not usually how major wealth gets built. Large wealth creation often happens when assets, roles, and decision-making authority are being reassigned. And this is one of those periods. Cerulli projects that $124 trillion will transfer through 2048, and nearly $100 trillion of that is expected to come from baby boomers and older generations. More than half of the overall transfer volume, about $62 trillion, is expected to come from high net worth and ultra-high net worth households, even though they make up only about 2% of households. That means the next era is not just about earning. It is about inheriting, managing, investing, protecting, reallocating, and not misusing what arrives. That is a very different game. Because old money psychology says wealth is made by the one who earns, but new wealth psychology says wealth is kept and multiplied by the one who can make decisions when money arrives. And that changes the entire emotional meaning of this decade. Because a lot of women are preparing to make income. They are thinking about salary, side income, business income, higher rates, better clients, bigger opportunities, and that matters, but far fewer are preparing for transfer, ownership, and asset control. Far fewer are preparing for the moment when money is no longer only something you work for, but something you are responsible for, something you must direct well, something you must protect from fear, something you must understand before it starts disappearing into bad decisions, delayed choices, lifestyle inflation, family pressure, or financial confusion. And that gap matters more than most people realize, because that is the gap where wealth is either built or silently lost. Culture still speaks to women as if financial maturity is something optional, emotional, or delayed until marriage, partnership, or some later version of stability. As if a woman becomes financially serious only after life becomes more certain. As if ownership is something she grows into after she has already been chosen, partnered, settled, or fully secure. But reality is already moving faster than that. The culture may still be telling women to wait. The market is showing that many women are not waiting. The National Association of Realtors reported that in 2025, single women made up 21% of home buyers, compared with 9% for single men. Among first-time buyers, single women were 25% in 2025, up from 11% in 1985. That matters more than it first appears to. Because ownership is never just a transaction. Ownership changes identity. Ownership forces decision-making. Ownership changes risk tolerance. Ownership makes a woman ask different questions. Not just, can I afford this? But how do I protect this? Not just, what do I want right now? But what am I building that outlives this moment? And that shift is deeper than money. Because ownership moves a woman from consumer psychology to steward psychology. A consumer spends. A steward allocates. A consumer reacts. A steward decides. A consumer asks what feels manageable today. A steward asks what creates strength over time. That is why this shift matters so much. The old female script was, be careful, be responsible, wait until it is safer. The emerging female wealth script is different. Own earlier, learn earlier, decide earlier, adjust while moving. Not because the fear disappears, not because the economy becomes easy, but because waiting for complete certainty has quietly become one of the most expensive financial habits a woman can have. And this is why the real question is no longer, can women build wealth? That question is outdated. Women are already buying, already owning, already entering financial responsibility in ways culture has not fully caught up to yet. The real question now is this. When more women have access to assets, who will have the psychology to keep them? This is where a lot of women can miss the window. Not because they never earn more. Not because they are lazy. Not because they lack ambition. But because their financial identity stays one level below their economic reality. A woman gets a raise. Her income improves. Her life looks better from the outside. But her lifestyle rises faster than her ownership. She earns more, but does not build more. She looks stable, but remains one disruption away from panic. She can cover more, buy more, handle more, but she is still not truly positioned. And this is where the trap becomes dangerous. Because it does not look like failure. It looks like progress. It looks like finally being able to breathe a little, finally being able to say yes to things she used to deny herself, finally being able to soften the pressure of years of stress. And that impulse makes sense, because this is not a moral failure. The system trains women to use money for relief first, not leverage first. It trains them to use extra money to recover emotionally, to fix what feels urgent, to soothe what feels delayed, to make life feel a little more bearable now. And after years of pressure, of course that feels natural. But this is exactly where the window can be missed, because when only 55% of adults report having enough savings to cover 3 months of expenses, that means a huge share of people are still financially exposed. So the danger is not only low income, the danger is living in a way that keeps money emotionally busy and financially unproductive. That is the phrase to really understand. Emotionally busy, financially unproductive. Money comes in and immediately gets assigned the job of making you feel okay. Less stressed, less deprived, less behind, less restricted, less tired of carrying everything. But money that is always busy calming the present cannot easily build the future. And that is why this middle zone is so deceptive. Some women are about to receive a bigger paycheck. Some are about to receive transferred wealth. Some are about to build assets for the first time. But if the identity underneath still says, "I just want to feel okay right now," the window can open and still pass. Because wealth is not only missed by people who never get access. Sometimes it is missed by people who get access before they build the internal structure to hold it. So what does a winning woman in this decade actually do differently? She does not just work harder. She sees differently first. The first thing she does is recognize the shift before she romanticizes it. She understands that a wealth window is not inspirational. It is strategic. It is not a cute moment to feel hopeful and screenshot a few motivational quotes about abundance. It is not a trend to admire from a distance. It is not a fantasy where money finally becomes easy. It is a structural opening. A moment in history where certain people move ahead because they understood what kind of era they were standing in. So she stops asking, "What do I feel like doing with money?" And she starts asking, "What kind of decade am I standing in?" That question changes everything. Because when a woman asks herself what she feels like doing, she often responds from fatigue, from pressure, from old deprivation, from the emotional weight of carrying too much for too long. But when she asks what kind of decade she is standing in, she starts responding from pattern recognition. She stops treating money like a private mood and starts treating it like a strategic environment. The second thing she does is move from income thinking to asset thinking. Because income pays, but assets protect, and ownership compounds. Income can help you survive a month. Assets can change the shape of your future. Income can cover a bill. Ownership can reduce future vulnerability. So she starts caring about different things. Cash reserves, retirement accounts, index exposure, business equity, property, skill leverage, tax-aware decisions. Not because she wants to look rich, not because she wants to perform. Wealth online. Not because she is trying to impress anyone, but because she wants fewer future emergencies. That is a very different motivation. A lot of people chase money to feel elevated. A winning woman in this decade thinks about money so she can become harder to destabilize. The third thing she does is learn decision-making before money arrives. This is critical, because money arriving before identity matures can become expensive. A wealth transfer does not automatically create wealth. A raise does not automatically create wealth. A business win does not automatically create wealth. A high-income season does not automatically create wealth. Sometimes those things only reveal how unprepared someone still feels underneath. Because if more money arrives while fear is still in charge, the decisions around that money can become emotional, delayed, reactive, performative, or avoidant. And expensive decisions do not always look dramatic. Sometimes they look normal. Waiting too long. Not learning soon enough. Saying yes too quickly. Living too upgraded too early. Keeping cash idle out of fear. Handing control to people who sound more confident. Mistaking access for capability. That is why the woman who wins this decade does not just prepare to receive more, she prepares to direct more. And the fourth thing she does is treat this as a positioning decade, not a performance decade, not a proving decade, a positioning decade. She's not obsessed with looking ahead of everyone. She's not trying to appear the smartest in the room. She is not trying to perform instant mastery. She is trying to avoid being emotionally unprepared when the shift reaches her. That is different, because performance asks, "How do I look?" Proving asks, "How do I compare?" Positioning asks, "What am I becoming ready for?" And that is the deeper advantage. The women who win this kind of wealth window are not always the women with the loudest confidence. They are often the women who quietly use the early years to reposition their thinking, mature their judgment, and strengthen the part of themselves that will eventually have to make bigger decisions. So the losing posture is this: when I have more, I'll think differently. But the winning posture is this: I need to think differently before more reaches me. Here is why this matters now, not someday. Because this is not a distant theory about the future. This is this decade. McKinsey says women's U.S.-controlled assets could rise to $34 trillion by 2030. That is not some vague long-range idea. That is a shift expected to unfold within the next few years. McKinsey also says Gen X households are expected to inherit around $14 trillion in the next 10 years, while millennials are expected to inherit around $8 trillion. That means the people who win the next phase may not be the loudest. They may not be the women performing wealth online. They may not even be the women who look the most confident right now. They may be the women who quietly use these years to become financially legible to themselves. Women who learned how they think under pressure. Women who noticed their avoidance patterns before more money reached them. Women who stopped treating financial clarity like a personality trait and started treating it like a responsibility. Not glamorous, not viral, just ready. And that matters more than people realize. Because the cruel part about wealth windows is this: they do not always look like opportunity while they are opening. Sometimes they look like confusion. Sometimes they look like expensive transitions. Sometimes they look like life-changing shape faster than your confidence can keep up. Sometimes they look like responsibility arriving before certainty. And that is exactly why many people miss them. They are looking for the moment to feel obvious. Safer, cleaner, more stable, more fully explained. But by the time a wealth window feels obvious to everyone, a lot of the best positioning has already been done. That is why this moment matters now. Not because you need to panic, not because you need to rush, but because the women who benefit most from a structural shift are usually the ones who started preparing while the shift still looked unclear. So if you have felt behind, that does not automatically mean you are late. It may mean you were taught to read money only as pressure, never as timing. It may mean you learned to see money as something that leaves, something that tightens, something that demands, something that exposes what is missing, but not something that can signal a shift in your life if you know how to read it correctly. So the feeling of pressure became louder than the reality of possibility. And if you have felt financially intelligent in theory but hesitant in practice, that does not mean you are incapable. It may mean nobody taught you that wealth is as psychological as it is numerical. Nobody taught you that income can rise while identity stays frozen. Nobody taught you that fear can delay decisions for years without looking dramatic. Nobody taught you that a woman can understand money conceptually and still struggle to move with it because something deeper still tells her to wait, shrink, second-guess, or postpone. And if you've been waiting to feel ready, this is your interruption. The women who benefit most from a wealth window are rarely the women who felt most certain. They are the women who let reality update their identity. They are the women who stopped using confidence as the entry requirement. The women who stopped assuming that readiness would arrive first. The women who understood that sometimes identity has to catch up to what history is making possible. So no, you are not trying to become a woman who chases money. You are becoming a woman who can recognize when history shifts and respond like she belongs in the room. Not a woman who earns and apologizes. A woman who earns, owns, decides, and keeps. Not a woman who looks stable. A woman who becomes hard to financially destabilize. Not a woman who needs perfect certainty before she moves. A woman who can feel the weight of a changing decade and still position herself with clarity. And maybe that is the deeper shift here. Maybe wealth, for a lot of women, is not just about having more. Maybe it is about becoming the kind of woman who no longer meets every financial opportunity with hesitation, self-doubt, or emotional delay. Because a once-in-a-decade wealth window may already be opening. And the question is not whether women are allowed to win it. The question is whether enough women will realize that this decade is asking them to become something different before it rewards them for it. Because some decades pay people for working. Some decades pay people for positioning. And this may be one of those decades.